It was nearly midnight when Ava stumbled down the gravel road in nothing but a torn jacket and scuffed boots, clutching her little sister's tiny hand in the dark. Her breath was visible in the cold Texas air, and her eyes, though red from crying, stayed sharp. She couldn't afford to cry anymore. At 17, Ava was no stranger to hard choices. Their mother had died 2 winters ago, and their stepfather hadn't waited long before turning violent. Tonight, Ava had finally had enough. Tucking 7-year-old Emma into her arms, she followed the only light she could see, a flickering porch bulb far in the distance. It looked like a farmhouse. A ranch maybe. They had nowhere else to go. When she reached the gate, her legs buckled, and she fell to her knees. Her hands trembled as she knocked on the old wooden door. It creaked open slowly. A tall man stood in the doorway. The porch light cast long shadows over his face, but she could see enough. The scar that ran from his eyebrow down to his cheekbone, and the wary look in his eyes. He looked like a man who didn't welcome visitors. Not anymore. Please, Ava whispered, shielding her sister behind her. We don't want to cause trouble. Just, let her sleep inside for the night. I'll work. I'll do anything. The man didn't respond immediately. He stared at her, then at the child. His face didn't change. He just stepped aside. You can come in. His name was Luke Callahan. A former rodeo champion, war veteran, and once one of the most admired ranchers in the county, Luke had disappeared from the town's social life 5 years ago after a barn fire disfigured half his body and killed his wife. He'd become a recluse, speaking only when necessary, working his land alone, and never opening his doors to anyone. Until now. He showed Ava and Emma to a small guest room in the back. It was sparse, just a cot and a space heater, but it was warm. Ava wept silently that night as she watched her sister finally fall asleep in peace. The next morning, Luke found Ava already in the barn, mucking stalls with bare hands. He tossed her a pair of gloves. You don't have to prove anything, he said gruffly. I do, she replied, eyes steady. You helped us. I'm not ungrateful. Luke nodded once and walked away. For the next week, Ava worked tirelessly, feeding horses, hauling hay, sweeping the porch. She didn't ask for much. Just food for her sister and a roof for the night. Every day, she expected Luke to tell her it was time to leave. But he didn't. Emma, with her golden curls and big questions, was the first to warm Luke's heart. Why do you walk like that? She asked one day, eyeing the limp he tried to hide. Got hurt, he replied. Does it still hurt? Only when I think about it. She leaned in close and whispered, then think about ponies instead. They make everything better. Luke blinked. Then, for the first time in years, he chuckled. Weeks passed. Winter turned to spring. And Ava, for the first time in a long while, started to breathe. She began helping Luke with finances, organizing his supply orders, even repairing his truck engine when it stalled. He was impressed, though he never said it aloud. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace after dinner, Luke finally spoke what had been on his mind. You said you'd do anything for shelter. Why? Ava hesitated. Her fingers curled around her chipped coffee mug. Because no one else would, she said. Emma's all I have. I couldn't let her stay in that place any longer. He wasn't just hurting me anymore. Luke's jaw tightened. I was going to offer myself, just to keep her safe, she added, voice barely above a whisper. But you didn't ask. You just gave. Luke looked away, jaw clenched. He remembered a time when his late wife used to say, kindness is what we do when no one's watching. The town started to notice changes. Groceries delivered to the ranch again. A man who used to snarl now walked with a little girl on his shoulders. And a young woman, who once arrived half frozen and broken, now stood tall at his side. But peace doesn't stay quiet for long. One Saturday, while Ava was at the farmer's market selling jam they'd made from wild strawberries on the property, a black SUV pulled up near the stall. Her stepfather. He stepped out with a twisted grin, holding up a court order. "You think you can just take my girl and disappear?" he sneered. "You're still a kid yourself. Let's see what the law has to say." Ava froze, fear pulsing through her. People started gathering. She clenched her fists but didn't back down. Then she heard the unmistakable crunch of boots behind her. Luke. He stood beside her like a fortress. Calm, unshaken. "This man laid hands on this girl and her sister," Luke said evenly to the sheriff who had just arrived. "I'm willing to testify. Got photos, too. Medical reports." The sheriff looked long at Luke, then at Ava's stepfather. "You're not taking that girl anywhere." It was over. That night, Luke poured Ava a glass of tea and slid a small envelope across the table. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "Your name. On the deed. To part of the ranch." Ava looked up, stunned. "I don't understand." Luke met her eyes. "You didn't just work. You healed this place. You brought life back to it. You brought me back. This is your home now, too. If you want it." Tears welled up in her eyes. "But I'm just. You're strong. Smart. Brave. Everything I thought I'd never see again." Ava and Emma stayed. Years passed. The ranch flourished. Emma grew up among horses and sunsets. She learned to braid manis, paint fences, and call Luke Papa. And Ava? She finished school, started a non-profit helping young girls escape abusive homes, and rebuilt the barn Luke had lost in the fire, naming it Hope Haven. One quiet spring evening, Luke watched the sisters laughing under the peach tree he'd planted years ago, and he realized something. The scar on his face would always be there. But the hole in his heart? That had healed. Sometimes, people enter your life when you least expect them, shivering, afraid, and with nothing to offer but a desperate kind of love. And in giving them shelter, you find something you didn't know you were missing, a reason to hope, to rebuild, to believe again. Ava came to the ranch offering herself in exchange for safety. But she never needed to. All she needed was someone who believed she was worth saving. And Luke? He gave her more than shelter. He gave her a home, and a future she never dared to dream.